Thank you, Your Excellencies. Hatem El-Gamasi, New York-based journalist for the Arabic publication NETV. Uh, the world has been facing a tough refugees crisis in the last few years. It's one of the biggest ever due to the many conflicts and wars, especially in the Middle East. And hundreds of thousands, if not millions, have been displaced. And integration is one of the biggest issues that face new refugees in their new homes, especially as we've seen in Europe. Education is a big factor in this issue to try to integrate the new families in their new homes. Norway seems to be the least country with any problem about integration. So would like to hear about that and what effort the UNESCO is doing through education to help new families integrate in totally different countries and societies about their new lives. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. I'm giving the floor, Your Excellency, to you for the first part, and then I'm going to answer. For sure.
Okay, thanks. Firstly, we have a very big engagement in the region, in the Middle East, having a pledge on Syria pledge of 10 billion Norwegian kroner over a few years, and also various initiatives in countries around Syria. In Norway, when it comes to Norwegian policies, we do try to have programs of integration that emphasizes education as well. One of the most, I say, specific or statements that were done a year ago is when we changed, expanded our government a year ago, we actually moved the responsibility for integration to the Ministry for Education. So it's very, we try to link it politically, but also practically, seeing it as a very important education as a key factor for integration.
Thanks a lot. Migration maybe is the issue of this century, one of the basic one for sure. And UNESCO will dedicate both energies and the main efforts to prioritize this issue in terms of education for migrants and refugees in the context of emergencies, but also in the context of integration that you mentioned. We established a process starting from last year. We published the Global Monitoring Report on Migration and Education. You find there data at global level, which can make a picture of the context, the different differences we have, but where we are, where we can, by means of education, help governments to address this issue. And the last part of the Global Monitoring Report that we launched, I should say, in all different regions of the world, is a list of 7 recommendations, starting from this recommendation about teachers training, just to mention the first one, about language learning, because language sometimes is the main barrier to integration, you know very well. Starting from the question which is a more government responsibility to include refugees in the national system, because we see with very clear evidence that if refugees are integrated in the national system, you can have really a more, I should say, peaceful society, less tensions, and this is something that you can see with numbers and quality interpretation of numbers. So we are building a strategy from UNESCO side to have in a couple of years how can I say, a framework where we can face concretely with technical assistance to government about these points.
Yeah, I just wanted, because a question was raised concerning integration in the first question. So just to say that in the case of Nigeria, first, the problem of child soldiers you referred to is not such a big problem. It is a big problem in West Africa region, but not specifically in Nigeria. The current challenge in Nigeria is of two types. One, we have a lot of IDPs, and most of them are housed not in camps, but in within the communities. Over 90% are really in communities, not in camps as such. But the real challenge is really resettlement. And resettlement, the government has done a lot to rebuild villages where peace has been restored. There is a semblance of governance of at the local level, including partnerships of the governors of the north of the area in all the 3 or 4 countries affected, with support from other partners. Reintegration is a bit different from the type the second question raised, because in our setting, the cultural gap between those living and where they are going is so, you hardly notice it. So it doesn't raise, because most of them will be Muslim, they speak probably the same language, and borders themselves are really not historically really as set in the minds of people. So that issue of reintegration, the resettlement issue, is really the most difficult one. There is a lot of work in Borno in particular on this score, but it's still a challenge. And there have been ways to reduce rejection of returnees, because it's a big social problem. Do you trust someone who only 3 years ago killed his uncle? How would he coming back? And these are the issues, and these are deep questions. And we have, through a lot of agencies, psychological support and working with communities to reduce the rejection of those who wish to come back to their communities. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.